Waynesboro, Virginia, an independent city of about 22,000 people, is facing a housing crisis, you might say. Right now, there's a lot of instability. As they say, there's high demand, low inventory, and it's leaving city leaders and residents kind of up in arms about what to do about this. Uh, some might say the good news is that there's a lot of development in the pipeline right now. There's a number, I believe, 1,600 units in some phase of construction at this point or planning with the city's planning department. Uh, that obviously will mean more inventory down the line whenever these projects are completed. But the problem is that a lot of these will be at market rate, right? They're not going to be affordable, and that's a big issue for a town that or a city, I should say, that is most of the residents, I believe I read 56% of the residents of Waynesboro, right here where I live, that they are considered low income. And this is definitely a working class city. And this working class city is being faced with rising rents because of that high demand and low inventory. Two instances that have happened here in Waynesboro that I've been made aware of. One was from a resident who was being evicted from Brandon Ladd Apartments here in Waynesboro. Told me that about 30 people were currently in the eviction process of Brandon Ladd Apartments. Those are typically low income apartments of town. From what I'm told, that's under new ownership. My guess is maybe they're looking to rehab, maybe charge more rent, but that's unknown at this time. In the meantime, this person who had a roommate as well as a child is going to live with a family member. Thank goodness that's an option because Waynesboro already struggles with a homeless population and no real place or plan to do anything about that. The Community Foundation of the Central Blue Ridge, along with other partners, including Augusta Health and Valley Community Services Board, is coming up with a long-term plan to try to make housing secure in the area. But they look at that. The executive director, Dan Lehman, told me as like a 10-year endeavor that's really been kicked off in the last year, where they've done a lot of education and got some working groups looking at the problem now. The second case that came up recently was a woman who lives on B Street in Waynesboro, typically known for more low income housing. Again, was renting a home there for $655 a month. That rent, she was told, again, new ownership going up to $1,500 a month. And for someone, who is a single mother with two children, she said she simply cannot afford that rent. She said if she gave landlords her entire check, it may not be enough. And looking into housing in the area of two-bedroom apartments or houses for rent, she said some of them were as high as $2,900 a month. There were others that were $1,500 a month, but she said she just can't afford that. Her and her two children have until September 30th to move, and right now her plan is to move in with a friend. So right now, neither of these situations are leading to homeless population necessarily, but the definition of homeless is, not having a permanent home. And in both of these cases, they could be considered temporary homes until they find out or figure out what they're going to do next, right? So, it is a problem. Waynesboro has said, I talked with a former mayor and Waynesboro city councilman who's running for re-election in November, Terry Short, has said that city council only has so much that they can do. As a Dillon rule state, the state of Virginia, they can't really do much more than, the state of Virginia has allowed them to do. And so there is a couple of things that he said could make a small dent in the problem in Waynesboro. This year, for the first time, I believe it was in February, City Council was approached by two developers looking to put in some low-income housing, one near those Brandon Ladd apartments. The other units were going to be on B Street, again, that other example that I gave to you, and they were looking for a designation that this is a revitalization area, because when you apply apparently to Virginia Housing, housing, for these tax credits. You're more competitive if you have that designation. So Waynesboro City Council ultimately, I believe in March, did vote to approve those two areas as with this designation, with this revitalization area designation, which means potentially those two developments could go forward. They were approved by Virginia Housing, which means that they will get some tax credits in exchange for offering some of the units below market value. So while some of the units will likely be at market rate, there will be a certain number that are required to be below market rate, which still can fluctuate from year to year based on, you know, the economy and the going rate in the town, in the city, that kind of thing. So, but as Terry Short said, you know, in the grand scheme of things, this is like a small dent in the overall problem, because if you're a working class city and you're making, you know, a, a, a wage that just isn't possible to live on your own or to make ends meet, you know, it's certainly a struggle. On Augusta Free Press, I broke down a list of the residential development that's coming to Waynesboro, and man, it's a hefty list. As I said, about 1,600 units coming. However, Leslie Tate, who's the director of community development for the city of Waynesboro, has said that most of these units that are under construction will be at market rate. The thing that might help, as I guess, you know, the amount of apartments and rentals increase in the area, it's possible that things could level out, that there would be a higher inventory and therefore less of a demand. As I wrote on Augusta Free Press, however, there is some job creation happening in Waynesboro. Northrop Grumman is building a facility here that's scheduled to open next year. They'll have approximately 300 employees at that facility. And those people are going to be looking for places to live. They can probably afford market rate places, but 1,600 versus 300, you've got to be pulling from somewhere else. Waynesboro has traditionally been known as kind of a bedroom community to Charlottesville and Albemarle County, where it's very expensive to live. And also oftentimes, you know, you'll pay a lot for a very small home or townhouse or something of that nature. You can get a lot more for your money here in Waynesboro. A city resident, Marcia Berg, who's lived in this area for a long time, one of the things that she questions is whether or not city is adequately prepared for, you know, if we have 1,600 new apartments in the area, do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the schools? You know, or you know, one thing she pointed out is that city staff, police, fire, school employees, teachers, that kind of thing, that were already, you know, those numbers are low. Like, we don't have all those positions filled that we should. And so how is this going to impact that? She has a development literally going in her backyard. I think she has about a 50-foot buffer from her property to where a development is going. Now, in the case of the development that's going behind her home, it's one of those things that was zoned for residential. So another thing that Waynesboro is looking at, and something that could impact things, is approximately 400 units that are going to be built at the old district home. That's been approved as part of a planned unit development, or PUD as it's called. Again, Terry Short said at that particular meeting where they approved rezoning to the PUD, that perhaps that allowing them to rezone from single family residential to this multi-use thing could bring townhouses, it could bring cottage housing, it could bring apartments, things that might be more affordable to some people in the community. That remains to be seen. You know, at this time, that's in the very early stages of planning. So there's a lot of questions right now in Waynesboro. While the inventory is low and the demand is high, people are saying that they're having a hard time making ends meet, that they're having a hard time finding a place to live. And then, you know, the flip side is we've got a whole lot of things that are in the pipeline. You know, not all these things even go before Waynesboro City Council. You know, a lot of times there are things that can be handled in the planning department and things of that nature because they're already zoned for whatever development is happening. So the city doesn't, unfortunately have but so much power over what's happening on some of this property if it's already in their comprehensive plan as a designated area. The only other thing that Terry Short offered as a possibility would be that there's some money that they get through I believe it's community development block grants, and there's a certain amount of money that you get automatically every single year, and you can technically refuse that money in exchange for being able to apply for larger neighborhood uh, you know r- projects, so to speak. And I see these things come through all the time, and I always wondered why Waynesboro wasn't on these news releases list, because places in Norfolk, Richmond, they're getting millions of dollars towards a project that potentially will lead to some low income housing. Waynesboro's not getting that money because they're getting this 800 or $900,000 every year automatically, and they think that that is possibly good enough. Terry said that he pushes for the city to refuse that money every year when budgeting things come up, and that, so far that hasn't happened. Waynesboro is one of those towns that's on the verge, right? It's got a lot of commercial development and now a lot of residential development. The homeless issue, unfortunately, there's no easy answers, and there's nothing happening right away, that can help there. Other neighboring communities like Harrisonburg put some of their ARPA funds towards a homeless services center. Charlottesville has a day center for the homeless, and Waynesboro doesn't. So there's no easy solution, but somehow Waynesboro's got to figure out this homeless problem, this housing insecurity problem, and needs to find a way to remember that it's a working class city, and that we need to have some options for the working class folks in the River City.